And so the scripture says in Luke 16:11, he who's faithful in little will be faithful with much. And so I'm bridging the whole thing in my story. Early on, God moved me out into something. Now, I'm an athlete. Now, I'm over 40 years old. I'm about to be 41. I still consider myself an athlete, but we know when we get in our 40s, things are different. But that's always been me, my backstory, a very successful football player into weight training. That's my story. And basketball and other things. And so immediately, it's like God knew I was a physical person, and he aligned me with a team, very unorthodox out of the box, but it was a group called the Conquerors Strength Team. And to me, it was like the greatest thing in the world, because this was a demonstration group that went around showcasing their strengths, so the gift and talent of strength, making it really fun into an event, and then using that to share a message of encouragement, hope, never quitting. I mean, all kinds of themes. And I thought there could be nothing better. Early on, I got aligned with this team, and the influence of these very integrable men started to change my life. And I just gave my whole heart to it. I would get called to volunteer to do these events, but slowly I started learning things. And before I knew it, it went from being a volunteer thing to turning into a part-time mission thing. And before I knew it, we're getting into progression of years, it was a full-time job. And so, here I was fulfilling something, and I was growing. But again, talking about getting unorthodox and out of the box, and God wanting to use things and having a greater purpose, here I was starting to fulfill a portion of that. And then it's like God flipped the script again. There was another dream I had in my heart. Being a physical person, it seemed completely not congruent with what we did. I mean, I used to rip phone books. I broke bricks with my head. I bent steel in my hands, and even, I know, in my mouth, right? The normal everyday stuff. And I had another thing I always wanted to do in the realm of the physical, but very much art, and you'll never believe it, but it was breakdancing. And God had orchestrated this journey where I just couldn't shake it. Anytime I would get exposed to the culture, I would just be enamored, and I would see myself doing it. I mean, honestly, there's a whole timeline for me along the way where I have very visible moments where the thing gripped my heart and I just couldn't let it go. Well, talking about all this sonship and stuff, at a time when it made no sense, I was older, age of 29, when most dancers would be retiring. God had got me to a place of freedom, still very physical, very athletic, to start to pursue a new dream. And there I went. I started to embark on this journey, and what it represented to me, because it's again, it's a piece of the puzzle. It's not the main caveat. To me, it was just a gift. But the thing with it, it represented just the fear removed from my heart, love coming in. And it's like, Greg, you're free to do that now. You're free to enjoy that. And of course, getting into that part of my gift, God had other plans with it. That was the paradox. It was the courage for me to realize and fulfill something. And I got to tell you, a 29-year-old built athletic meathead, I'm 6'2", I weighed 265 at the time. Remember, I bent steel. And now I'm pursuing breakdancing. It was the most out-of-the-box thing in the world. God pigeonholed me. One of the only places I could practice at the time was at the public YMCA. And I had headphones with my music. People later told me it was one of the funniest things I ever seen. Basically a bodybuilder power lifter dancing, and they couldn't hear the music. And people said I didn't have rhythm. But God started to bless it. And the thing for me, it wasn't about fulfilling the dance. I was just actually having the time of my life. I was just like feeling like me and having fun. And another side of art I love is music. Being physical, now that was expression. But it was the fact that I was walking in a freedom. And again, it was something that God had for me to enjoy. But I learned later as I progressed forward and God blessed it and I started to gain skills and get good at it, God also didn't want it just for me. But here was the paradox. Here I was doing it freely. I was putting in the time investment, but I wasn't trying to make anything. But God had a movement in mind. All of a sudden now there were people being drawn towards me with the movement. And now I had another decision. Was this a gift just for me, or was it something to share the DNA that made it happen to continue to make a difference and have impact? And that's exactly what God was up to. And so I often look at this stage in my life, though, I still relate it to, like I said with David. It was like the bear and the lion. It was still yet a smaller victory because God was preparing me for a bigger victory, just like he wants to do with you, for how it applies to your life and your gifts. And all we got to do is just say yes. And so I'm excited, more to come about this. I love creativity and uniqueness and sharing about it. I like surprising people because, even if you look at me now, you hear all that and you go, what? And just a side note before I go, I still, in my 40s, I dance. I get in the studio once a week. Something I still love, I still enjoy. A lot more dynamics to that. Coming back at you more again next week.